Lee Iacocca, great and terrible, once expressed the following idea: new cars need to be produced only so that used ones are sold on the secondary market. For the average Russian, this statement is especially relevant. When prices even for mass budget models exceed 1 million rubles, the secondary market becomes the only way to solve their transport problems. One very attractive option in this market is the first-generation Mercedes-Benz GLK. Or not. In the second half of the 2000s, the popularity of the crossover segment gained height as a supersonic interceptor, and its market share approached 20%. It is clear that such a reputable brand as Mercedes-Benz absolutely did not want to pass such a delicious pie with its spoon, especially since the brand from Stuttgart already had some experience with larger SUVs. In general, the appearance at the 2008 North American International Auto Show in Detroit of two Mercedes concepts at once, the Vision GLK Freeside and the Vision GLK Townside, did not particularly surprise anyone. Moreover, both concepts were from the series At Least Tomorrow on the conveyor. The name of the first hinted at some kind of off-road orientation, and the second that it would be an urban crossover, but many experts then immediately wrote that, in fact, this is the same car. And they were not mistaken. Only a few months had passed, and at the Beijing Motor Show of the same 2008, the serial version of the compact crossover Mercedes GLK with the factory index X204 was presented to the world. This index directly indicated that the novelty was developed on the basis of C-Class cars, the W204 sedan and the S204 station wagon, and the choice of premier sites indicated which markets were betting on. Well, the name GLK itself was an abbreviation of the phrase Geländewagen Luxus Kompaktklasse, compact luxury SUV. As usual, the car received a rich range of engines, both diesel and gasoline, a large list of available options, as well as a proprietary 4MATIC permanent all-wheel drive system. At the same time, a rear-wheel drive version was also offered in a number of markets, and the latest at that time adaptive 7-speed hydromechanical Box 7 G-tronic. The assembly was established at the Bremen plant and subsequently at Mercedes plants in Egypt, China, and Vietnam. Sales of the GLK in Europe began in late autumn 2008, at the same time official sales began in Russia. It should be noted that only all-wheel drive variants were sold in our market. In addition, not all engine options were supplied to Russia. The model reached its peak of popularity in 2013 after it underwent a slight restyling in 2012, during which the exterior and interior were refreshed. In addition, the car received modified versions of the main engines. The release and sale of the GLK continued until 2015, when the GLC crossover took its place. In total, about 30,000 Mercedes GLKs were sold in Russia, plus a certain amount was imported privately. Prices. Today, Mercedes GLK in the secondary market costs from 620,000 to 1,600,000 rubles for pre-styling cars of 2008 to 2011 and from 1,100,000 to 2,300,000 rubles for restyled versions of 2015. One way or another, it is quite possible to buy a Mercedes crossover at the price of a new Renault Duster or Hyundai Creta. Actually, this is often what happens. When there was a need for funds to purchase real estate, I had to select something within 0.5 million rubles. After a long search, I realized that apart from the Duster, you can't buy anything for our reality for the winter, but after traveling and looking at the options for 500,000, I realized that I couldn't buy the Duster either. 700 to 800 is even less. And then an acquaintance was just selling his GLK, a proven option, especially a diesel one. After a short test drive, I realized the car will suit me and the price too. But is such a car suitable for everyone? What will the owners have to face after the purchase? Let's figure it out. Hate number 5, cabin and trunk volume. The first thing to remember for a person who decides to buy a Mercedes GLK on the secondary market is that such a car is not suitable for everyone. First of all, because of the modest internal volumes. Take, for example, the trunk. Theoretically, its volume is 450 liters, but nevertheless, In a huge number of reviews, the owners complain that they cannot take everything they need with them. The luggage issue is solved exclusively by the roof box. The luggage rack is small for long trips, but it saves the box from Thule, which fits perfectly on the rails, 2 children, a stroller, a couple of suitcases, and you can't do without a roof box at all. One circumstance haunts me, a very small trunk. In reality, it feels smaller than it was on the Mazda 3, and since there are 2 children in the family, you have to constantly transport the stroller. And when it is in the trunk, then all the other things do not fit there and lie in the cabin. The fact that many configurations were equipped with a very intelligent tailgate servo is, in this case, rather weak consolation. But the salon itself is also not happy. And if everything is, in fact, normal on the first row, then complaints about the capacity of the second row are found literally in every second review. If the front seats are pushed all the way back, then the rear passenger's legs rest against the back of the seats. If you are tall, if you move the seat to the maximum, your hand barely crawls through the back. That is, you can't even put a child in. Of the minuses of the cabin, this, of course, is the lack of space in the back. I'm 1.75 m tall, and I can't sit down behind myself normally can. The installation of a child seat makes the rear sofa especially cramped, since there are only Isofix mounts on the right and left. So the owners complain. As a result, if you go to the village with your family, then the one who sits in the middle of the back sofa sits out the 5th point in just 10 minutes. We tried to put a child seat in the middle, but it can only be secured there with a seatbelt. In addition, it turned out that the child rests his feet on the central tunnel, and passengers on the left and right have to sit half-turned. In a word, it is better to think about all these circumstances in advance, because in a huge number of offers to sell the Mercedes GLK, the owners first praised their car for a long time, and explained the reason for selling such a wonderful car. In the spirit of the family has grown and we needed a bigger car. In short, for those who often need to carry more than 2 adults with luggage, the GLK is not the best option, if not an option at all. Love number 5, original appearance. As they say, there are no comrades for the taste and color, and aesthetic perception is a very subjective thing. Perhaps the appearance of the Mercedes GLK is not the best example of automotive design, but what cannot be taken away from it is originality, and a natural originality that has not become an end in itself. Yes, it is a little rough and angular. Aerodynamics cannot boast of a low drag coefficient, but that's what makes it good. It's recognizable in the stream. The appearance is individual and not blurred by the newfangled trends of designers. When all the cars of one manufacturer become similar to each other, like twins, sometimes differing only in size, writes one of the owners, and I completely agree with him. The characteristic silhouette of the GLK with a lobed windshield, a massive engine compartment and a brutal radiator grille with a large 3-beam star is immediately recognizable in the stream, from any angle and distance. The GLK is a typical example of an era when designers wanted to give the look of crossovers a certain resemblance to real SUVs, and that's what many people like even now. Before the GLK, all my cars were square and masculine. Modern remnants are not to my liking. Design, I personally like it. The streamlining of the Audi or Murano has already become boring, but here some kind of brutality is felt. At the same time, interestingly, despite all the outward masculinity and angularity, a businessman in a business suit, an unshaven macho in a sports windbreaker, and an elegant young lady look equally organic behind the wheel of the GLK. It is no coincidence that there are so many representatives of the beautiful half of humanity among the owners. As a result, many of them at one time opted for this model precisely because of the appearance that sunk into the soul, which even today does not leave indifferent. I liked it. My wife is generally delighted. It's a matter of taste, but it looks very modern, and I think it won't get old for another 5 to 6 years. The car is insanely beautiful, at least for 2014 I was sure of it, and even now I still have no doubt about it. My wife and I really like the look of the GLK. In our opinion, this is the most beautiful parquet of all. But the most important thing in the appearance of the GLK is still the originality, which the later crossovers of this brand, GLA, GLC, pretty much lost. Hate number 4, thresholds, mirrors, parking sensors, windshield. But original and expressive design is not only pluses. It can also grow features that cause obvious irritation in the owners. For example, the design of thresholds. In many reviews, the authors note that the car is not so high that there is a step threshold, but it is already high enough so that in bad weather you can neither get into the car nor leave it without staining your trousers. It was almost impossible. I'm generally silent about the kids. In the off-season, when they get into the car, the help of adults will definitely be needed, otherwise they themselves will be rot and the interior will be dirty. No less number of reviewers on the internet complain about too small passenger side mirrors. But if they were just small, it would be half the trouble. The trouble is that after 20 minutes of driving on a wet road, all the dirt is on the mirrors. Plus, many versions of the GLK were not equipped with their heating. Well, the fact that many configurations of an expensive premium car did not receive an electric drive for folding mirrors causes bewilderment and regret among the owners, as well as the absence of headlight washers. The problem of not the best view in the side mirrors is exacerbated by the situation with parking sensors. Complaints about them can be found in almost every second review. Firstly, the owners do not like the very archaic and inconvenient algorithm of their work. The readings of the sensors have to be read while looking through the rear-view mirror, and the beep will sound only at a critical approach, when you already, consider, arrived in an obstacle. And, again, that would be half the trouble. Worse, the sensors themselves are very unreliable, often fail, both the sensors themselves and the wiring harness going to them. Well, in winter they tend to behave inappropriately. The owners describe it like this: you're driving, it's snowing, it hits the sensors, they start beeping, you turn them off, but after a while they turn on again by themselves, and you have to turn them off again and again. Finally, the windshield. It is installed, if not vertically, then at a not too large angle. In many ways, it is this slope that gives the car a distinctive appearance, but thanks to the peculiarities of aerodynamics, the glass constantly catches pebbles. Well, the replacement costs quite a lot of money, $15,000 to $16,000 for glasses of leading brands. Well, work. It is clear that you can always find a cheaper replacement, but if you drive not only around the city, then you have to change the windows quite regularly. The windshield that was changed for $25,000 was sandblasted for replacement. It's like that for everyone. The windshield is the curse of the GLK, the owners complain. And they are also surprised that a windshield without heating is installed on such a car. In a car for that kind of money, you can't put a heated windshield. This is nonsense. Without heating at -10 and below, it happens that the glass from the stove does not really warm up at all, and with our winters it really bothered me. The wipers complete the picture of minor troubles. In the cold, they creak and become overgrown with ice. They freeze in the parking lot, but if in winter you tend to raise the windshield wipers to avoid this, you need to be careful. When you start the engine, the brushes will return to their original position under the hood while scratching the paint on its edge. Love number 4, cameras, climate, lights. Would I recommend this car for purchase? Definitely yes. Just look at the option with the maximum content of options. The seats are better with leather and memory, the steering wheel is heated, the audio system is with an amplifier and a subwoofer in the spare tire, a rear view camera. All this increases comfort and driving pleasure. Indeed, in principle, the GLK has a very good optional content, albeit with some oddities, since some of the options are present in the basic trim levels and may be absent in higher ones, for example, in the AMG version. But about the cameras and the all-round viewing system, the owners write that everything is really visible and in good quality. And in general, the owners really like the salon. They write that the quality of the materials commands respect, that after the GLK salon the interior of the Japanese seems like a barracks, that every detail, be it a button, knob, or switch, is made in such a way that you want to touch them. The air conditioning system causes a lot of enthusiasm among the owners. The climate is magnificent both in winter and in summer. I have never seen a better climate. It is never hot or cold, and it never blows out of nowhere. I set it to 22 degrees and forgot. It's just perfect. You set the temperature and forget about it, it blows quietly and well. After Subaru, I didn't think that you could not regulate anything. Owners especially like the electric heater, thanks to which warm air is supplied to the cabin even before the engine warms up, and the fact that in the auto mode the entire interior warms up or cools evenly thanks to intelligent airflow control. I came across only one complaint about the operation of the air conditioning system. They say that when the forced airflow of the windshield is turned on, it blows hot air in the face very much, although the author of the review admitted that the windshield also thaws very quickly. And in almost every review, even in a very critical one, you can find enthusiasm about the headlight. Firstly, the light itself is very good. I was driving from Lipetsk to Kursk at night. I didn't strain my eyesight, it was like driving in a bright tunnel. Secondly, the automatic light itself turns on when necessary and switches from far to near in the presence of oncoming cars. But most of all, the owners like the adaptive cornering lights. Adaptive xenon works flawlessly, shines exactly where you need it, given the trajectory of the car, plus side cornering lights, chic light. At night as during the day, you drive around the city, turn at an intersection, and the headlights turn behind the wheel, as if looking around the turn, very convenient. In the yard, when parking at low speed and the slightest turn of the steering wheel, an additional turn signal light turns on. You can see almost 90 degrees of what lies on the ground where you want to turn and park. Lighting is a fairy tale. This intelligent system illuminates itself in corners, and the range itself turns off when a car appears in the oncoming lane. In a word, I turned on the light in the auto mode and forgot. But most importantly, this system really increases the safety of driving in the dark. Hate number 3, seats, eco-leather, and multimedia. Surprisingly, it is a fact. In a number of reviews, the first row seats are described as extremely comfortable, and the overall ergonomics of the driver's seat are close to ideal, but there are also those who actively complain about the design of the seats. The landing is uncomfortable. For half a year I still couldn't get uncomfortable seats. After the W203, it's just a killer for the back. It seems normal around the city, but driving long distances is just torment. After 2 hours your back, pillow, on which you sit, less than in the W203, the seat itself is somehow hard, and even multiple adjustments, including lumbar support, do not help make it comfortable. I can continue to quote representatives of both the first and second points of view. Well, what can I say? We are all different, and ergonomists focus on the average figure. But the eco-leather, which covers the chairs in the vast majority of the most massive configurations, causes a lot of criticism. Firstly, it is somehow undignified for a premium brand car. The realization that you are sitting on leatherette, of course, does not warm your soul. Although it's different for anyone, maybe someone is happy that not a single cow was harmed in the manufacture of Merce, the author of one of the reviews sarcastically remarks. But something else is worse. Firstly, in a lot of reviews it is noted that by the turn of about 100,000 kilometers, eco-leather begins to lose its presentation, crack, and the seams begin to unravel. Leatherette on the seats is rubbish. It is painted with jeans and bursts at the joints. The seats get dirty mainly from blue jeans and, unfortunately, this bluish coating cannot be wiped off the seats. Naturally, owners of cars with a bright interior suffer the most from this circumstance. Is this leather meant only for white pants? One of them is indignant, and he has every reason to be indignant. But there are even more complaints about the discomfort that contact with this artificial skin causes. In the summer, my back sweats, and even if it's plus 20 outside and the climate is working in the car, then, driving from home to work in 30 minutes, I feel that back is wet. A similar, but opposite effect in winter. Even if you wear insulated jeans, then in the cold, when you get into a cold car, you get the feeling that you sat down in an ice puddle with your bare ass. But in winter, you can turn on the heated seats, which works quite efficiently and, so to speak, gently, without giving the impression that you are sitting in a frying pan, but in summer this is really a problem. A lot of owners solve it radically, dragging the seats with Alcantara. It costs 30 to 40,000 rubles, but, according to those who did it, it was worth it. Well, in many reviews there are complaints about the quality of the standard media system, which was equipped with the basic and medium configurations of the car, an archaic radio tape recorder, like Vega 1, just infuriated, even after the Koreans, bad radio, where other cars are catch the signal of the radio station, GLK can offer one hiss. I had such music 20 years ago in the Ziguli, some speakers and a 2-band equalizer. It seems like a trifle, but putting a flash drive is an event. Open 2 doors, get to the bottom. In general, owners are annoyed by the quality of this system, which does not correspond to the premium status of the car. Yes, the top versions were equipped with high-end Harman Kardon systems, but only the top ones. But the rest are bewildering in a 2012 car. No USB. Yes, there is no USB in the car of the price segment above average. Now there are already built-in multimedia systems in lighters, but there is no USB in the GLK Special Series. Retrofitting is also a difficult question. Multimedia interface cannot be bought in addition, only with the replacement of the head unit, which costs about $40,000. At the same time, an attempt to connect a mobile device via AUX does not always end in success. If the player or phone is connected to the onboard network, background noise starts outputting to the speakers. Love number 3, dynamics, stability, maneuverability. But for most owners, all these minor misunderstandings are fully compensated by the pleasure they get from driving. First, dynamics. Even the diesel 170 horsepower version does not cause a feeling of disappointment. The dynamics are quite enough, although it seems that the car itself imposes a neat ride. But if you need fast overtaking on the track, you can switch to sport mode. I assure you that on the track, realizing that this is not Formula 1, the agility of the GLK 220D for overtaking is enough for the eyes. The dynamics of a 170 horsepower diesel engine is enough. Mercedes-style speed set is smooth, without feeling flooded, but 110 seconds. Leaves and, most importantly, very elastic on the track. Acceleration 90 to 140? Yes, easily, although, again, everything is very smooth and delicate. Needless to say, the owners of more powerful petrol versions are also satisfied with this parameter. Although it is they who sometimes leave reviews in which disappointment is felt. After Subaru, I lack dynamics. It seems like an atmospheric 3-liter engine. There are about the same number of horses, but no, the GLK accelerates like a trolleybus, confidently, but without a spark. But surprisingly, many authors believe that one of the main advantages of the Mercedes GLK is handling, easy and accurate steering, no worse than the BMW X3, but I won't say anything about the Q5 at all. The handling is excellent, it enters turns very cheerfully, the car is predictable. But here you need to understand that the owners are not pleased with drivers' excitement when passing fast corners, namely, predictability and stability in any, even the most difficult conditions. Behind the wheel of this car you feel comfortable on the highway, and on the mountain serpentine, and on a country road. The owners note that the car practically does not react to longitudinal rutting and is not prone to aquaplaning, that it perfectly keeps the trajectory on asphalt that has not been cleared of snow. In a word, everything is Mercedes-like. You show me where to go, and don't interfere, I'll do everything myself. It is worth noting that not the most outstanding, but quite decent cross-country ability. Real four-wheel drive and stabilization systems allow you to drive on an icy curbstone, make your way in a snowdrift, or climb a snowy hill. Of course, the car is not designed to overcome extreme off-road conditions, but it may well cope with quite serious problems. Once I went to a friend's dacha in winter. A snowstorm, almost a snowstorm, you can't see a damn thing, they push everything on the roadsides, and I'm like on a tractor. I drove and raked snowdrifts with a bumper, I never even got out of the car. There was a field with rye crops after a rainstorm, and a country road the road after heavy rain, but 4MATIC worked perfectly. I was even surprised at such cross-country ability and the smartness of electronic systems. I didn't have to run after the tractor, confidently goes on ice, and in snow, and in mud, ESP works out just gorgeous. Not a single skid, although you have to drive along our harsh, forgotten by public utility streets near Moscow. Actually, what else is required from a crossover? This car is designed so that, as one of the owners wrote in his review, without tension, pressing against the road like an iron, shove at a speed of 150 at night along the icy Simferopol highway and crawl the last 200 meters through 20-centimeter snow to the gates of the cottage without any problems. And, of course, many note the branded Mercedes version of the wheels and excellent maneuverability, 30 centimeters in front, 30 in the back, and already parked. And the task of getting through the car-cluttered yard is also surprisingly easy for the GLK. Hate number 2, stiff suspension, kicking box. In many reviews on the internet, there are complaints that the gears in the 7G-tronic box switch unevenly, with jerks. The 722.9 box is twitchy, it pushed in all gears up and down, the diagnostics showed nothing, the oil is clean, they write on the forums that this is norm, the 7G-tronic box after the 5-step W203 is complete junk. The car has a mileage of 70,000, one owner, the pensioner before me, the car is under warranty at the dealer and was serviced there for any reason, the oil changed at 60,000, but it does not work adequately, hard switching with shocks, blunts at start, and after jerky sharp acceleration, despite the fact that you barely press the gas pedal, when driving in long traffic jams, more than 2 hours, the box sometimes switches with jerks. The same thing in winter, on an unheated car. And although not all owners complain about the operation of the box, it is worth recognizing that this, as the programmers say, is not a bug, but a feature. There is another point related to the speed switching control algorithm. The GLK has 3 shift modes: manual, economy, and sport. The vast majority of drivers drive 99% of the time in economy mode. If you drive calmly, then the box is constantly trying to keep the gear higher and the revs lower. But if you suddenly want to go more actively and turn on the S mode, then absolutely nothing will happen. The only thing that is immediately felt is that the car always starts from first gear and not from second. In order for the box to start shifting more actively to lower gears, it needs to be driven, and this takes some time. But during the time the box was being rebuilt, everyone had already left, and there was no one to race with, not the next day, writes one of the owners in his review. In general, this feature must be taken into account, as well as the fact that the Mercedes GLK automatic transmission is combined into one unit with a transfer case, and if you abuse starts from traffic lights in the slipper on the floor mode, then it is quite possible to get into expensive repairs. But one of the biggest disappointments, judging by the reviews, for many was the suspension. Indeed, by default, a car with a 3-beam star is expected to have an outstanding ride, a sort of separation from road bumps, but here, the suspension is very stiff, any bump is transferred to your soft spot, and if you drive into a pit at speed, the adaptive light can also turn off. So slowly, I didn't drive speed bumps in any car, the suspension is very stiff, and on the track you feel all the joints, if a hole comes across at speed or a small drop, the suspension breaks with such blows as if the wheels are about to fall off. In the city, the same thing, the suspension is far from comfortable. If you catch a hole or lying down at 40 km/h, then it feels like the A-pillars will go through the hood. Many are frightened by the fact that with such hard blows, the central locking is triggered to open. In fact, this is done intentionally, in the interests of safety, so that the doors do not lock in the event of an accident. But if you start to understand, it quickly becomes clear what is the reason for such rigidity, which is not too typical for the brand. Most of the cars sold in the Russian Federation were initially equipped with low-profile tires on a 19 rims, and top-end configurations were a 20. Such rubber really helps to improve handling, and the appearance is better. But if you want to get rid of rough suspension breakdowns, then the only way out is to install wheels of dimension 235/6 or 17. They do not look so pretentious, but the smoothness of the ride improves radically. Love number 2, reliability, safety, economy. What else do motorists expect from a Mercedes car? Naturally, reliability. And in this regard, the GLK does not fail its owners. Of course, there were also childhood illnesses, primarily typical for cars of the first releases, there were recall campaigns, and there were simply unsuccessful copies. But the closer to our days, the less likely it is that you will see a review in the spirit of constantly broke down, tortured with malfunctions, sucked money like a submersible pump, in general, got rid of and crossed himself. Actually, such reviews about the Mercedes GLK are generally rare. But those in which the owners indicate reliability as one of the main advantages of the model, on the contrary, are quite common. Oil change in the engine every 10,000, oil change in the automatic transmission every 60,000 kilometers. The engine and gearbox on the way to 200,000 kilometers of run never gave a reason to think that they will soon need to invest. You can drive up to 200,000 without serious problems. Having driven more than 100,000 on it, I can say for sure, faithful and reliable, not a single breakdown, not a single knock or squeak. The car is ideal. At the moment, the mileage is 223,000, and all units are native, only shock absorbers and springs have been changed. For 6 years of joint adventures, there has not been a situation in which something would have failed. We drove it from Kaliningrad and to Paris, and to Germany, and to Croatia at sea, and to the Czech Republic, and to Moscow, and to St. Petersburg, and even to Murmansk through Finland, and somewhere else. Everything works like clockwork. And such statements can be quoted for a very, very long time. Separately, the owners note the reliability of the 2.1-liter OM651 turbo diesel, which is generally considered one of the most trouble-free Mercedes engines. It was not in vain that it was also installed on commercial models, as well as the highest corrosion resistance and strength of the body. The body metal is beyond praise. I only had to tint in one place. When a pebble hit and did not immediately see a chipped paint, I immediately noticed the thickness of the metal of the body parts. It is difficult to squeeze the surface with your finger. This difference is especially felt in comparison with the Forester, in which a slight pressure in the area of /U200B/U200B rear wing threatens to cause a dent. By the way, this strength of the body is another factor that positively affects safety. We have already talked about stability and predictability on the road, but the passive safety of the GLK is also on the level. Here, for example, is such a testimony. I bought my first GLK in 2013, and a few months later an accident with a total. I have only a small mark from the belt and a bruise on my right hand from the steering wheel. Finally, the question of fuel economy. Naturally, the different engines that the Mercedes GLK was equipped with have different performance. But here's what's interesting: almost all owners are satisfied with the efficiency of their devices. Naturally, the 3.5-liter M272 with 272 horsepower has the biggest appetite, about 14 to 15 L/100 kilometers in summer and 16 to 17 L/100 kilometers in winter. But the owners find such an expense more than acceptable. But the owners of the same engine in a 3-liter version may complain. They say, 11 to 12 L/100 kilometers is a bit too much. The computer does not show less than 15. If the cork is tight, then the consumption is confidently approaching 20 liters. Consumption on the highway depends not only on driving style, but also on the road itself. For example, if I go to a village where there are no descents or ascents along the highway, and where you don't have to overtake, then a couple of times I managed to reach a passport consumption of 8.5 liters per 100. On the same track, but with overtaking, you usually get 9.5 liters. If you drive more actively or if the track is uphill, then the consumption gets out for 10 liters. But the consumption has never been more than 11 on the highway. In general, after the Beshki, I state, twice as much money began to go to gasoline. There is no unanimity among the owners of versions with a 2-liter 4M274. Someone writes that the consumption on the highway at a speed of 100 to 120 kilometers/h is 7 liters, and in the city you can keep within 8 to 10 liters per 100, and this is very good. Someone notes that the consumption significantly exceeds the official TTX. Did I press the pedal like that, or does the car's consumption significantly exceed the declared one? Let's say I'm slowly crawling home in the evening and I think, probably, we'll meet the declared 9 now. I checked 12. If you actively press on the floor, it's also in winter, then it's just buckets. But on the highway exactly 6 liters and not a drop more. Well, the diesel here is simply out of politics, out of competition. Of course, it all depends on the conditions and the severity of the foot on the gas pedal, but, as a rule, the average consumption fluctuates around the figure of 7L/100 kilometers. With a calm and uniform movement along the highway, it can even be lowered to 4.5 to 5L, although in the city in winter, it can reach up to 10 to 11L/100 kilometers. However, in the city, consumption is very different. If you calmly ride in the stream, then you fit into 7.5 to 8.5 L/100 kilometers, and if you start to trot, then, as the owners write, 14 is not the limit. Hate number 1, the cost of maintenance and repairs. Maintenance and repair of premium brands of cars is more expensive than mass. This is an axiom, and no one argues with it. Mercedes is a premium brand, so no one expects any savings in this matter. But here's what's interesting. In their reviews, more than half of the owners note the high cost of maintenance among the main drawbacks of the model, but the cost figures themselves that they cite do not cause much fright. Although, of course, it happens in every way. According to the owners, the price of maintenance at official dealers can be from 15 to 25,000 rubles, but great service can cost 35 to 40,000. Only here you need to take into account that in order to meet the 15,000, you will most likely need to purchase all the necessary consumables somewhere on the side. Nevertheless, the authors of the reviews are quite categorical. If you are not ready to spend money on maintenance, you should not take it. The machine is smart, complex, and requires skilled hands. Spending on preventive repairs after purchase can be much more serious. A check came out. It turned out that there was a problem with the balance shaft star. The replacement price was 100,000 rubles. I had to change the consumables for this model for the front suspension, as small knocks were already beginning. The entire repair cost about 50,000 rubles, somehow they found some kind of oil seal during maintenance, and a couple more spare parts were needed to be replaced, for which they rolled out 170,000 rubles, of which about 45 to 50,000 spare parts, for a year, and 30,000 runs from 20 to 50,000, a box flowed. Whatever you touch, everything is very expensive, especially when compared with the Koreans and Japanese. Replacing the box gasket 95,000 rubles at the dealer. Indeed not cheap. Of course, not all owners fly into the need for expensive repairs. Perhaps the following story is more typical. 2 every 10,000 kilometers, the price is 6,500 rubles. For oil with an oil filter, plus I bought my air and cabin filters for 2,000 to 2,500 rubles. Repairs at service stations with friends. After the purchase, I replaced the front suspension arms with a Lemfurter kit, about 35,000 rubles. With work. Replacement of a pair of failed sensors, about 5,000 rubles. Replacement of engine and automatic transmission pillows, 32,000 rubles. Replacing the headlight fixing bolts, 5,000 rubles. Every 20,000 kilometers fuel filter replacement, 5,000 rubles. And replacement of the intermediate shaft bearing, 1,000 rubles. At 80,000 kilometers, automatic transmission oil change, 12,000 rubles. Replacement of antifreeze and brake fluid every 30,000 kilometers, 5,000 rubles. This is mandatory. I cleaned radiators for 8,000 rubles, USR for 3,000 rubles, injectors, all for 12,000 rubles. All prices include labor. It seems to be a substantial amount if you add everything together, but since these are costs for several years and more than 100,000 kilometers, it's not so scary. And yet, anyone who decides to buy a used Mercedes GLK should understand that you can save money on work. In large cities there are quite good services specializing in cars of the famous brand, but spare parts, one way or another, will be quite expensive. At the same time, it is far from always possible to use non-original components. In a number of reviews, I came across statements that GLK does not like non-original spare parts. In any case, this definitely applies to brake discs and pads. And the original ones are expensive everywhere, and it's not for nothing that the Chinese Anti-Monopoly Service filed a lawsuit against Mercedes-Benz, because according to their calculations, it turned out that if you assemble a car from original spare parts, then its price will be 12 times higher than the recommended price from an authorized dealer. Love number 1, it's a Mercedes. For a short period of ownership, about a year, I realized one thing: there is a Mercedes, and there are other cars. Such statements can be found in reviews about any model of the Stuttgart brand, although Mercedes cars are assembled not only in Stuttgart. For example, GLK left the assembly line of the Bremen plant. And it's not just about the reflections of the glory of the cult, included in the folklore of the 600 and GLNs, which fall on the more affordable models of the great brand. They can impress themselves. You sit down and understand that this is a premium. Compared to the Qashqai and Tiguan that we had before, it's just a different level, as if I moved from a Ziguli to a foreign car. After a Mercedes, it's hard to get used to other cars. I went through a lot of them, Toyota, Volkswagen, but got into a Mercedes, bought, and never regretted it for the entire 9-year period of operation. The GLK has many advantages that attract potential buyers and allow you to feel that this is a real Mercedes. Interior design is a song, very beautiful and unusual, excellent sound insulation. In city traffic jams, you feel completely isolated. It is not for nothing that they say that when you drive a Mercedes, the outside world respectfully moves away from you, and only you have the right to choose what to pay attention to. I love this kind of independence. No wonder Mercedes was and remains one of the most liquid brands in the Russian secondary market, and GLK is considered almost the most liquid model of the brand. And even if after the purchase you suddenly realize that the GLK is not exactly what you need, or it's just time to change the car, you have every chance to do it without big financial losses. I sold it quickly, since this is one of the most liquid Mercedes. In the summer of 2016, I bought a car from a friend in 2012 with a mileage of 55,000 kilometers. Departure for 4.5 years, up to a run of 180,000 kilometers. Then he sold it for almost the same money for which he bought it. Finally, no one has canceled the fact that the words Mercedes and prestige have become almost synonymous. As one of the owners of the GLK writes in his review, respect and respect. The funny thing is that the guards at all sorts of industrial zones and construction sites respected me the most. What kind of people do we have? Since the car is MB, it means that the person is big. In general, I didn't aspire to this, but MB, even GLK, in the eyes of people already means some kind of status. The author of another review, whose family simultaneously operates the Range Rover Evoque and the Mercedes GLK, notes, the statistics are such that the Merc in Moscow is passed and thanked much more often than the UOC.